The piece is about the conflict between faith and evil. So there's a great deal of dissonance in this piece. This is not the kind of music that you would listen to relax. It's full of that kind of sound and that kind of sound. And that's because the subject matter is very serious, very intense. It's about a woman who herself was very intense, and she could indeed be very angry. Not so much angry at God as angry at the regime that's put her there. And a regime she sees as very cruel and heartless. One of the striking things about this piece is her own name, that Lu Pei has taken the musical letters of her name, Chinese characters, and turned them into notes. So her name, musically, sounds like this. And that, although it's not exactly a theme, it's a series of notes, a row of notes, it comes over and over again in the piece. The piece begins, which is, as it were, her angry side. It comes towards the end very peacefully. This is just before the end. And the piece, as I say, opens with that theme. And then over that, a very clever device. He takes Samuel Barber's Adagio for Strings, which is a very well-known a piece associated with grief, with mourning, and he writes variations on it. So over Lin Zhao's name, underneath, you get this. And the clarinet, that's the opening passage for the clarinet. So this is a kind of variation on grief, on mourning. The composer is already mourning her death, her martyrdom. The Barber theme also comes in very, very quietly later in the piano. So it's a kind of sinewy, winding tune in the Barber now is taken up into this piece. She had this protesting, angry side to her character, undoubtedly, and that comes out in her letters. But she also had this very prayerful, trusting, softer, more reflecting side, which also comes out in the letters. And this he represents this way, through a little oscillating motif in the woodwinds. This comes 5 or 6 times, indeed very near the end. This is her steadiness, her trust. The composer speaks about her regaining her strength from God's love. What's interesting is that never changes. That's never varied. It's never turned upside down. It's not extended. It's never played loudly. It's just always there. And very recognizable when you hear the piece. The ending is especially interesting. We've had a great deal of anger and a great deal of dissonance, but it ends very calmly in what the composer calls celestial radiance. This is his way of expressing Lin Zhao's not only her faith, but her final rest with God. What we get, he talks about the celestial rivers, the rivers of the new heaven and the new earth. And for that, we get a lovely, very peaceful sound, played over and over again on the piano. Over that, and this is particularly interesting, I think, we get something that sounds odd at first, and it goes like this. What's that? That's her name again. But now it's split up, and the way I think of that is of an official in the government typing out her name on a typewriter, recording her death. But over that, or underneath that, she's actually at rest. The composer adds another moving touch to this. He suddenly quotes Bach. Bach wrote a very famous piece called Passacaglia in C minor, and which begins, or near the opening, it's like this. And this. And this. So he puts this on top of these other elements, and the piece ends very, very quietly with the clarinet on just one note. Having played this chord, the clarinet just carries on, and the last little, it's still her, as it were. It's a clever piece, it's a moving piece once you know what's going on, and once you're prepared for a lot of dissonance, for a lot of conflict, because so much of her life had to be about conflict. She is a dissident, after all, so there's going to be a great deal of dissonance.